Okay, let's finish up the first chapter of James today. Just to recap today where we're going, we're going to look back a little bit and see what we've covered and what we can remember about this special letter. There's so much in this chapter. I'm excited to share it with you because I actually learned something that I hadn't noticed before. The letter of James, so far, we know who it's written to, we know who wrote it, we know the theme of it, and just some questions about that we might have had was which James it was. Do y'all remember which James that we suppose that had
brother?
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is because there's some interesting things about that idea that I think come into play with this book. And it is the fact that Scripture records that the family of Jesus, especially the brothers, did not follow Jesus. So, you wonder about that and you think, okay, well, but Jesus was special and he had power, and like, why were they not open to that? And what kept them away? So my first question, looking back over what Yvette's presented so far, is that what's interesting about that, and what should we consider about that?
Why was it that they didn't follow him?
Yeah, why? The question of why. What would be something else that you can think of would be interesting?
That could be jealousy, or just feeling like they think he's better, or he thinks he's better than the rest. Maybe.
Right.
Because he had powers that they didn't have.
Mm-hmm. So my thought about it is there was something that happened to James between the time that Jesus was walking among him and the brothers and the time that he supposedly writes this letter. What do you think that might have been? Or what do you know it was?
He was from the dead.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and James saw him. James was a witness to the resurrection. And so, I think about when I'm reading this book and his directives, because that's really what this is. It's a letter saying, hey, brothers, this is what you need to do to work on your faith. And he we talked about, Yvette brought up, this is a letter of contrast. So you've got this compared to this and not this. And so we have a lot of those in the last 7 verses here that we're going to cover. But the interesting thing that I think about is, when James is writing this, is he writing it thinking about himself? Like, I didn't do this, so be sure to do this. I didn't do this, and I didn't listen, and so do this. And we know because he was a pillar in the church of Jerusalem that people looked up to him for this kind of help. Like, they went to him. And so I often think whenever I'm reading these things, did he experience that? Is he writing from, firsthand account? Is he writing from, look, I goofed up and this is what changed me, and don't make this mistake. And I think that's interesting in this book. So the theme, of course, is faith. And so I have this really crude drawing up here of a string of pearls, because Yvette brought that up, that, the things that we're learning in this book are like a strand of pearls. And when I think about pearls, I think about adornment. You put them on, like I wore some today. I've got earrings on. Yeah, this is on Zoom. You can see my earrings. And it's because you think of, when you put on a pearl, it adorns, like it enhances something beautiful that you might be working on, right? So each pearl would represent something that James is going to disclose to these Jewish brethren that's going to help them build or adorn their faith. It's going to make their faith great. There is some irony, and we kind of hinted to that this book, or this letter that we have preserved from James, is about faith, and that James at one time had none. Right? I mean, he didn't follow his brother, he had none. So it's ironic that he would write, but maybe so appropriate, that he writes a letter about faith, how to build your faith and make it great. So another question, and then we're going to move on about James is, what do you think James lacked in his life that kept him from following Jesus? Well, we talked about part of it, but do you think there was anything else maybe that besides just his physical properties of his brother? Like he shared a home with Jesus, like he grew up with him. And Jesus wasn't always a man walking around doing miracles. He came here as a boy, and he had a family, just like our children do. And James knew that, and so did the other brothers and sisters. So I think what lacked was just what we're talking about in this letter is faith. He didn't have faith. But one thing that I think about too is that, these children grew up under the tutelage of Mary and Joseph. And Mary and Joseph, and it's evident from what James writes, because when you read it with the mindset of where did he get this? Like, who taught him this? Is that you can go to the first part of Proverbs, chapters 1-9, and you can see a lot of the same language used in James. And you think about, well, did he get it from there? Well, he could have, because Mary and Joseph would have known the Proverbs. They would have been teaching their children, right? These were Jewish kids. So that's how I think of James. So this letter is filled with contrast, and it's filled with imperatives. And if you know what an imperative is, if you're, doing homework with your kids and they got English, it's words that indicate command. Like in the book of James, we're going to see a lot of them, especially in these last 7 verses. Let's watch for them. And what I want to think about when you see them is how the life of James compelled him to choose the words that he chose like that. And some versions might be different, like mine, I think in verse 19, says, know this. And some of your versions may say so or therefore, but my version uses an imperative. It says, know this. And I think those are really strong words. And you have to know, James is using strong words for a reason. So watch for those, and you might even, on your notes, just list them, because usually imperative words are acting words, and that's our topic today, is being doers. So, these are words of action. Some of them that I listed were count, let, ask, be, lay aside, receive, is, and there's others I'm sure that you'll find. So we left off in verse 18, which is a really good segue. We're going to read verses 19 through 27. And the print in my Bible is really tiny. That's why I have the glasses on top of my head. So I may have to use my glasses, but right now I can see.
You want a slightly bigger version?
No, it's okay. I think I can muddle through. So verse 18 reads this way. Of his own will, he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures, which is, for this section that we're going to start, is a huge entry. It's just a big door saying, come in, I've got more to tell you. So let's read verses 19 through 27, and I'll just ask, Julie, can you and Connie just split that up? 19, Julie, if you'll read 19 through like 24, and then Connie, can you read 25 through 27?
So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. But be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourself. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was.
But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the word, then this one will be blessed in what he does. If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religious is useless. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans, widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world.
Thank you. All right, so looking at verse 18 real quick, I wanted to point out something that we're going to cover later that James actually circles back around and pulls down. And that is, we are brought forth by the word of truth. So he's addressing Christians and he's acknowledging how they became that. So that's a no. We become Christians by truth, by God's word. So my question was, what is the obvious way a Christian is brought forth from that verse? That's not in the bank of verses that we're covering today, but it's connected. So what I want you to see is that we're brought forth by the word of truth, and this is what we live by. So here we go. Let's look at verse 19. Julie's version, I noticed, said so that. Mine says no. So that's an imperative.
So
And yeah. So James' goal of admonishing Christians in this letter is to make our faith perfect or complete. And this strand of pearls is perfect, it's complete. There's not a space to add any more pearls, it's perfect or complete. And that's the theme of the whole letter. And excuse me. Something that reminds me of what we're talking about here is Romans 10:17. When I think about faith, you know, you can't isolate faith from knowledge. They go together. And so that connects to truth, right? Because truth is something we can know. And Romans 10:17 says that faith comes by truth. So that's what I wanted to pull out of 18. And 19, James uses that. It kind of hinges on verse 18, is that, you're brought forth out of truth, so know this. And now he's going to itemize what we're to know. So pulling out some contrast from what we've just read, let's start with the first one that I came up with, and I will ask, what in verse 19 do you see is contrasting there?
Swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath.
Okay, what are two opposites? Let's just say that.
Quick and slow.
Yeah, quick and slow. So James is saying, hey, brothers, be quick to what? Hear and slow to speak. Slow to speak. And slow then to be angry. So I'm going to put here the two contrasts that I see. We're gonna hope this board doesn't fall. Wrath and righteousness. I'm just going to stop there. Wrath and righteousness. Do you think those are contrasting? Yeah. So one way that we can build our righteousness is to quell anger. And then he's going to show us, how do you do that? Well, just listen to what people are saying. And then just think about what you're going to say. And that's so helpful for me because it's real easy to react instead of interacting on things. And if we're trying to build our righteousness, this is a good place to start, right? Then he goes into and he describes why this is important. Why this contrast is important is because it doesn't bring about godly righteousness or the righteousness of God or a spiritual righteousness. So that's why he's saying, look, brothers, this is the contrast and this is why. So
He gives us a tactic to avoid unrighteousness. Be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Slow and quick, those are more contrasts, they're opposites, and they help us. I mean, I've got a clear picture of that, right? So it's good. His admonishment is to help us build up our faith. So he's given us some tangible things. He's given these brethren some things they can latch on to. And I think, this is my opinion, but I think that James, at the time that he's writing this letter, he's past the point of what you might say, just nodding his head and agreeing, right? I mean, we call those people in our world today yes men. You know, they're just all about agreeing, that you don't really know where they stand, and you don't really know how they're going to interact. They're just yes men. They're just always in agreement. James is way past that. And he's going to come down in his letter, and you're going to see that come out. So he says, be slow and be quick. That leads us to another connective admonition. Let's move down to, I have verse 19, but it's actually verse 21. Let me make sure I'm reading my notes right. Let's connect this idea in the therefore in verse, I hope I've got that right, verse 19. So we can see what the it, which is the it hinges off of the connective in 18, us. He's brought us forth. And then the it is to be in 21, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. So therefore, whose version, does anybody's version of 19 have, instead of know this, say therefore?
Mine says take note.
Take note?
Uh-huh.
Yep. And Julie says so.
All
right. So when you see a therefore, you ask yourself, well, what is that there for? And then you have to go backwards. So that's what I'm wanting to do. We're going to go backwards to see what kind we are as we're brought forth. So if we're a kind or a first fruit or a yield of righteousness, then we are to do something. And 21 tells us what that thing is. So if we are a kind of first fruit of righteousness, what are we supposed to do? Like, what's our action in 21?
Get rid of moral filth and evil.
Yeah. So we are to put aside or lay aside, or my version in this Bible, I have English Standard in this one, but I also used a King James version, I think. Put away all filthiness. So mine says put away, put aside. I don't know. Does anybody else say anything different there?
Well, mine just says get rid of it.
Get rid of, yeah. So you get the picture. In other words, if you're working on righteousness, get wickedness out of your life. Just dump it. And so the therefore is there because if you're working on righteousness, you're not going to have this wickedness. You're not going to have excesses of filthiness, rampant wickedness, and then you're to do something else. And this is on the positive side. So you've got another, I see a lot in James, you got ifs and then. If this is true, then do this, or then this is what's going to happen. So that's starting right here. So if you're righteous, then you have something else to do. If you're working on your righteousness, then he says, he gives another action word, and it's an imperative. It's not a questionable word. It's not an if you want to, it's imperative. It's receive. So that can mean a lot of different things, but the clue to what receive means right there is in the word implant. We use implant a lot today in our world, and you get a visual picture with implants. You know, we do implants for a lot of different things. What do you guys think of when you hear the word implant?
Teeth.
Teeth.
Pacemakers.
Okay, teeth.
Pacemakers.
Pacemakers. Anybody else think of another implant?
Well, mine just says planted in you, which can save you.
That's right. That's right. That's where we're going, B. So when I think of implant, and years ago, I had this verse used on me, talking about the Holy Spirit. And I had to do some digging, and I thought, I don't think that's what that means, because it doesn't agree with other things I know in scripture. So when I trace the meaning of this word, not only does it take you back to the sower and the kinds of ground that the seed falls on, but when you look in the Greek, the root of the word, or the meaning around the word, is intent. So when you're looking at implanting something, like we've talked about different kinds of implants, like you might have an eye, you might have like I have a bionic shoulder, you might have an organ implant. The intent that your doctor has when he gives you an implant is that it's gonna grab hold. The body's gonna grab hold of it. It's gonna become part of the body.
That version says engrafted.
Engrafted. Yeah. We don't use that word very much. I mean, farmers, I think, do engrafted or grafts, but you understand that when you have burn victims. I guess I'm talking from the medical standpoint, because that's my family's background. So, a burn victim, they may have an or a graft of skin, and they want it to be engrafted into the other skin. But the idea there is intent. Your doctor's never going to give you an implant that he thinks, oh, that's never going to take root. That ain't ever going to do you any good. He's going to give you an implant that your body's going to accept. The intent there's, this is going to work, right? So when we read this verse, let me get back to where I was, 21. Therefore, in other words, if you're righteous and you've been brought forth from the truth, put away all filthiness, and then do something to fill that void. Because if you're wicked and you're filling your life with evil, you're going to have an empty space there, right? So he's saying, read or reach out, receive the implanted word. So when you get this word, when you get the word of truth, plan to do something with it. Put it there so it'll grow, okay? So I don't have a contrast there. I just wanted to bring up the kind that we are to be like, and the if and then. If you're this kind of yield fruit, then you're going to do these things. You're going to lay aside, and you're also going to receive. So those are the two. And those are all kind of contrasts. You can see an if, then, or a not this, but this.
Like get rid of and accept.
Yeah. And this has always helped me, this thought. Someone had shared this with me one time. They said, when you're starting or you're trying to give up a bad habit, it could be anything. It can be like drinking too much soda or eating too many chips or whatever you're going to choose. You have to put something there. You have to put something else there. It's just like when you have a big vacant room and you're going to move furniture around and you take one piece out and it's just bare. You have to put something else there. You have to put something good there. If you want to be good, you have to replace evil with something good, so that your string of pearls is all connected and it's adorning your faith. So moving on, let's see, we receive teaching with the intention of, and this is going to hinge on the next set of directives that he's given in 22. We are implanting it. It's an adjective in the Greek, which means newly sprung up. So when you have a new plant, like Yvette brought the first class, she brought this plant, and you intend for the plant to grow. And if you get a new seedling, you're thinking, oh, that's the whole joy of springs, that you see hope. Oh, this is going to grow. So when you're receiving truth and instruction, then intend that it's going to do good and you're going to do good with it. All right. So if our intention that we're receiving this good teaching is going to be that we're going to do something with it, James says, okay, if you're going to do something with the word, then this is what you need to do. And that's going to be in the verses that follow. But before he gets there, he's going to compare. So here's another comparison. He's going to compare being a doer with what?
Hearer.
A hearer. Okay. So let's contrast that. It's pretty evident, but we can talk about it a little bit.
Just real quick,
Yeah, you bet.
you just made a really good comment about if a doctor has implanted something or engrafted something within you. You said it's with the intention that it will be helpful to you, it will produce a desired result. So just a note, what we've just studied in verse 21 is able to save your souls.
Yes.
It's not just saving your health or improving it or
Yes.
saving your physical life,
Good point.
but this is actually going to save your soul.
That's right. And
So-
if you notice in James, he kind of speaks in layers, but he goes back up and he gets a point from one layer, like save your soul. He's going to address that. But if you're religious, at the end, he's going to say, if you're religious, keep yourself unstained from the world. So they all hinge on each other. It's like when you fold together paper and you only take one side of it and you gather it all up and then you let it go. It forms one long strip of paper, right? But it's all hinged together. And that's the way I see these verses. But if that's right, the intent that we have, if we're going to be righteous, the intent is that we're going to be with this word of truth that's going to grow in us and produce faith in us. The intent is it's going to save us. And, in Jesus's prayer for his apostles in John 17, he talks to God and he says, save them from this present generation and sanctify them, set them apart for your work with your truth. So the truth is powerful. And when you receive it, when you get it, when you hear it and you see it, don't just hear it. We tell our kids, and my mom said this to me, and I've said it to my kids, are you listening to me? And that meant, are you listening with the intent that you can process this? That's what she really meant to say. Are you listening to me? And when she said that, her eyes would be locked on my face. And what she wanted me to do was me to put her eyes on her eyes so that she could see in me that I was understanding what she was saying. And I think that's what James wants us to do here too. But it's this word that we're brought forth from, if we're receiving it and the intent is to be doing something with it, is that it's going to save our souls. All right. So 22, but be doers of the word and not hearers only. Because if you're over here and you're just doing this, what does James say will happen?
You're deceiving yourself.
Yeah, you're fooling yourself. You ever been told that by your parents? You're just fooling yourself. Is that, we can sit and we can hear somebody speak really good and we can identify with that. We can be, making comparisons or like, oh yeah, well, I do that. Oh yeah, I do that. And you walk out there and you feel really good. But that's all you do. You don't really take any direction. You just hear it and you feel really good. And that's all you do. And then James is going to give us a really good example that I think we can all identify with because we all use this item. But to make sure I covered everything there. Be doers of the word, not hearers only. For, that's a connective word. And there's a lot of connective words in this last part of the first chapter of James. There's lots of connective words. This connective word, for, can also mean because. It's a preposition, and prepositions mean how you get from one point to the other, like you hop over, you go under, you go around, you go across. Those are all connective. So this is a connective word for if anyone is a hearer. And he doesn't say being a hearer is detrimental, but he qualifies the word hearer. What does he qualify hearer with? This is y'all's class, so. Only. You can be a hearer, right? It's not bad. I mean, we come every Sunday, we hear a lot. But James writes and he says, if you're a hearer only, You're like something. So only a hearer sees himself and makes no adjustments or connections. Like he sees himself, but he doesn't really see himself. And James is going to use a household item that we use all the time. I'm not sure that they have those as readily as we have them, but he uses this as an example. He uses a mirror. And so when you're a hearer only and you catch yourself seeing yourself, but you're making no corrections or adjustments to yourself, it reminds me of, all through the Old Testament, God's people were condemned for, you have eyes that see, but you don't have a heart. Your heart's not with me. You might be seeing, you might be praising me with your lips, but your heart is not with me. And so I wrote some passages down that are actually quotes of that. They have eyes that see. They have eyes, but they do not see. This is where deception creeps into our lives. That's why James used that term back in the other verse, that we can be deceived ourselves, but if we'll receive the truth with the intent that it's going to change our lives, we'll be saved. We'll be saved by that. So here, deception would be the opposite of being intentional, right? Because when you're intentional, you've got the truth that you're acting on. So I see that as a kind of contrast too. So Psalms 115:5, Jeremiah 5:21, Matthew 13:15, Ezekiel 20:12-2, Acts 28:27, and Romans 11:6 are all passages that say they have eyes, but they don't see. So this is another way that James would have revisited that idea that, if you're a hearer and you don't do anything, you're just like a person, and let's get into that. You're just going to be just like a person who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. So you've got a man and he's got a mirror. It's clear. He's looking at it. He's looking at his physical face. And when you look in the mirror, what's your intent? Why do you look in the mirror?
See yourself.
V's laughing. Why did you look in the mirror, V? I look in the mirror.
I want to make sure I look okay.
Right. Like when I look in the mirror, I want to make sure I don't have any facial hair. I don't have an eyebrow out of place. My hair's not sticking up. My lipstick's on straight, whatever. And if I see that on my natural self, I just walk away. Well, I don't really need a mirror to do that. And if you're my friend, you will tell me if something, like I tell my kids all the time, please don't let me walk around like that. Just come over and tell me, Mom, you just let me know. And that's what a mirror does. It reflects yourself back to you. So if you're a man and you're getting ready and you're intentional and you go to a mirror, but you don't believe what you see or you don't act on what you see, is that wise? Not really. I mean, what are you using the mirror for? I mean, it's not doing any good. So it's not going to save you from embarrassment. It's not going to save you from, looking out of kilter or whatever. It's not going to do anything for you. So he says, if anyone is a hearer of the word and he's not a doer, he's like that. This is verse 24, for he looks at himself and goes away. And what does he do with the information that he had, that the mirror was giving him? It was accurate, right?
Forgets about it.
He just forgets about it. Have y'all ever done that? Have y'all ever been like, oh, I'll fix that in a minute, like your buttons are off or something, and you see that in the mirror, go, I'll do that in the car. And you get in the car and you forget. And you get to where you're going, and what does somebody do? If they're your real friend,
They let you know
Where
you
you
still
go.
right
Yeah,
button.
or your zipper's unzipped or whatever. It could be a major adjustment that's going to save you from being really embarrassed. And this is the example that James is using. And I've often thought, how many times did James get that mirror from Jesus? He's brought up in this household where he knew scripture. I mean, we condemn the Pharisees of this all the time in history that, here the Pharisees where they had all the law, the prophets, they knew all the predictions of Jesus. And as they saw each one of those being lived out and being fulfilled, and they didn't believe, I wonder how many times James revisited that when he wrote or just lived his life out. How many times did you think about, I remember Christ, I remember my brother saying that. I remember that in scripture. And I think that's why he uses such forceful imperatives in this letter. He's not playing around. He's done with that part of his life. He's done with saying, yeah. He's like, no, for real. This is what you do. This is how you get your strand to be complete so that you adorn your faith. So let's move on. So he looks at himself in the mirror and he goes away and he at once, this doesn't even last. He doesn't even remember it 2 blocks from his house, he just forgets about it. Maybe he's busy or whatever. Maybe James was busy. I often wonder, where was James when Jesus was like doing all this stuff? Couldn't have, maybe he wasn't with him. We don't have any records that he was with him, right? Like when he was doing the miracles, like when he was raising the dead and he was changing fish and bread to feed thousands of people. Where was James?
Probably just living his life in Nazareth still.
Why? You think about, or maybe he was traveling. Maybe he, had a fishing job that took him away or a carpenter job that had him, somewhere else. We're busy people, right? We might be told something. We might be told, hey, this is off in your life. Oh, I'll fix that later. I know. I've got to do that. And we just get busy with life and we forget. And
Well,
so,
I'm
yeah,
sorry. I don't recall exactly where I found it in here, but it says that James was the minister of one of his churches out there, so he may have been on the road a lot, traveling and.
well, James was a pillar in the church at Jerusalem in
Mm.
Acts 15 because that's where a couple of the apostles go and they ask advice on circumcision and they ask advice on Gentiles. We've got these Gentile believers and, we need to know what to teach them. And so they go to James. And I think that, that happened after Jesus died and appeared to James, because like we said at the beginning, James was not a believer. James was among the siblings that mocked Jesus. And we know that they didn't believe because scriptures never recorded, them interacting with that. They did just the opposite. So once Jesus died and came and appeared to James, and scripture said that he appeared to James. Martin and I were talking about that, how James would have seen his brothers, the holes in his hands, the place in his, he would have seen the risen Lord, and he would have known that his brother died. He was dead. And that he came back to life. That's what changed James. And until that time, I don't think he was ever involved with any of the activities. And the church didn't exist until after Jesus came and rose again. So the followers of Jesus that would have been disciples and his apostles would have been with him, in all these different places. But I'm not so sure that James or many of the siblings, if any at all, were with him. That's just something we don't know. We know on occasion that, this is in Matthew, I believe, where Jesus is there and he's teaching and he says, these are my mother. They said, your mother and your brothers are outside. And he said, no, these are my mothers and my brothers and my sisters.
They may have been in town for that particular Passover.
Yeah,
So
that's what
may
the
have
Jewish
been,
family.
they may have seen it like they may have been part of the crowd.
Right.
His mother was like right up there.
Right.
So, and she would not have come, well, she may have been traveling with them by then, but
right.
They may have seen it themselves.
Okay. So those are all really good points. And I thought about that, because he had a family, this was his family. This was his physical family. But I think at the point where Jesus became a man, which, you think about the baptism of Jesus, you think about the temptation of Jesus. Jesus was, he grew, scripture say he grew in wisdom and in favor with God and man. He grew in wisdom and stature. And so he grew up, he became a man. And at that time, children back then were given, they weren't sequestered at home like we do with our children. They were given a job or an internship or an apprenticeship, and they were working. So, Jesus's business was God's business. And so he was about doing that. So getting back to James, and I love those rabbit holes sometimes we go down because it gets us thinking. When James is writing this about a mirror, he uses the mirror as a tool that when you look into it, you intend to correct something or make an adjustment. So if we're receiving this teaching with the intent that we're going to become a doer and not a hearer, we're looking into the mirror to see clearly. We're not looking into the mirror just to go away from that mirror and forget what we saw. So James says, but the one who looks into, and now he's going to make a comparison with the mirror. But the person, the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be something. He will get something. Just like up here, we get a breath, we're not a hearer, we get something.
Because you gotta hear before you can do.
That's right. That's right. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing comes by the word of God. So when you give up, when you look into this perfect law or your mirror that's going to show you it's complete, you're seeing yourself, then you're going to be blessed. And if you act on what you're seeing, you're going to be blessed. But you're only going to be blessed. Are you going to be blessed if you look in the mirror and you just hear it, and you see it, and you acknowledge it, and you're done with it? No, he says you're blessed by doing it. So there's another do in there. So, let's see. So let's talk about, I'm just going to throw a question out here. What is a person who catches himself not seeing with intent to correct in the mirror? What is he actually doing? He is doing something. What's he doing?
He's praising himself, look how good I am, or how.
What is a
I look
person-
good and so forth.
Yeah. What is a person who catches himself not seeing with intent to correct in the mirror? What's he actually doing? I mean, if you look at yourself in the mirror and you think, oh, I'll do that later, or I'm good enough, and you leave. What are you doing?
You're proving
You're
yourself.
denying your faults for one thing.
There you go. Are you deceiving yourself?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The mirror tells you the truth, doesn't it? Mirrors don't lie. Well, some mirrors do. I've seen some mirrors that look really skinny. I'm like, that's something's wrong with that mirror. But mirrors basically don't lie.
I think too, if you do that and you say, oh, I'm going to do that later, then that's a way of putting off or putting aside the spirit. You're denying the spirit to allow the things that you've heard to affect you. So
Right, and what's the danger in that?
you're delaying it, right? You're making it a delayed response. I'll do that later. I'll do that when I get older, or I'm not ready to quit doing the things that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
order to get the things that are really better for me. So
That's a good point, Julie. Were you going to add to that, Rosemary?
Yeah, you're basically lying to yourself.
Yeah.
You're lying to yourself and then you're lying to God.
Yeah. So I have that Jesus said that these people that he said they have eyes, but they don't see. He says they're rebellious. I mean, you're just ignoring it. Like you're just, if you have a child that does that, that's rebellious. I told you to do blah, 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 but you didn't do it. The mirror's telling you, hey, fix your hair. Hey, get that lipstick off. Hey, whatever else it is, but you don't do it. You're just rebellious. So that's the way Jesus sees that. On the other hand, which is what but means in verse 25, on the other hand, He who looks into the perfect, and perfect in this chapter means complete, because we're talking about complete faith or perfect faith, and James uses that several times. The perfect law of liberty. Now he's qualifying the word in verse 21. So in verse 21, we've discovered that we're brought about by the word of truth, and this word of truth is also called, now James is calling it, the perfect law of liberty. Why do y'all think he phrases it like that? Think about James's background. Think about who he's writing. Also, we didn't touch on this, but all throughout the book of James, I've noticed he uses this term for these people over and over and over and over. And in verse, let's see, I think it's verse 19, he qualifies the word I'm talking about even more. What would be the word I'm thinking about for his recipients? What does he call them?
Brothers.
Brothers. He calls them brothers, and in 19 he calls them beloved brothers. So for James to go from not following Jesus to seeing the resurrected Jesus to being a pillar in the church of Jesus to now he's adopted this family of believers and he loves them. He calls them beloved, but he reiterates all through the book, brothers, 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 brothers. So that's important to notice that.
Excuse me, Joanie.
Yeah.
Leah got cut off. Can you reconnect her?
I don't see her trying to get in.
Yeah, she left, but I've been looking to see if she comes back in.
Okay,
She
we'll let
hasn't
back in
asked.
whenever she shows up, okay? Thanks for that. So looking into the perfect law of liberty, I think that James is playing on his background when it comes to law, saying it was a law, but he qualifies the word as being the law of liberty. It sets us free. The law that we know and that James would have been living under would have been the law of sin and death. We talked a little bit about that, I think, in our Hebrews class, is that they lived under the penalty of sin if they didn't keep the law perfectly. And so now that law has been done away with and they're living under a different law. It's a law that sets them free. So a person that's a doer, that is a righteous doer and not just a hearer, he's going to live under a different law. And the reason he calls it perfect is because he realizes, and he's trying to teach us hearers, it's perfect. It's complete. You got it all. So that's why he uses, I think, the perfect law of liberty to qualify the word that he talks about in 21, verse 21. The implanted word. Let's see. So what's the contrasting, what's the contrast you see here? Like in verses, probably starts in 23. Here she is. 23 and goes through 25. What's the contrast there?
Hearing and not doing.
Okay. I'm gonna put, this is what you mean, Julie, I think. Action.
Oh, yeah.
Action versus, what's the, I put this. I don't know if y'all forget. So you're going to do something or you're going to forget about it, which kind of goes with that, but he qualifies a little bit more. And I thought it was another contrast. Now, if we're looking at verses 20, what does that say? 25?
26.
26 through 27. These verses, James he does a turning point, I think, or it's now different. He throws something in that's also a builder, but it's also at this point different. And it's like he's going to generalize all of this. He's talked about joys and trials, temptations, accepting the word, being steadfast under trials. He's going to kind of just squeeze all that into like a little compact statement or thought. And that is this: if anybody among you thinks he's religious let's talk about that word for a minute. What's religious? We use it a lot of times. We say, oh, he's religious about that. He's a religious bike rider. Or she's a religious exerciser. She's a religious vitamin taker. What do we mean by that? Religious.
Someone who does it all the time.
They do it all the time. So it's a
Habit.
or a ritual, right?
Mhm.
They just do it all the time. Julie's a religious crossword puzzle worker. She does that all the time. So, it's something that you do repetitively. So these brethren, they're doing something repetitively and they think that's good. So they're actually being a doer about it. But he says this, and like I said, he's gonna cram all this teaching that he's gotten, this word, and he's gonna say, if any of you thinks he's religious. So when I looked up religious, this was a good word picture. It said it's like, the definition is like you're a person who keeps a flame. During times where you didn't have matches or, fire starters, you had a person that kept the flame. And that was an important thing to do, because if you ran out of fire, you were in trouble. You had to start it all over. So religious has something to do, or it's like the meaning of a keeper of a flame. Someone that's gonna keep it, they're gonna be entrusted with, they've got to keep it burning, they're responsible for that. And it's an external evidence of an inner piety, your inner goodness. It's how you show it outside. It's being religious. It's your constant acts of piety, of your godness, your awareness of God. But like the person that's looking in the mirror without the intent of adjusting his hair or whatever it is, adjusting the image, if he doesn't bridle his tongue, now here's another building, another pearl that's in our strand. If he doesn't bridle his tongue, then his religion, his practices, his flame keeping is not going to do him any good. It's kind of like you're back up here, you're a doer, but you're not a hearer. You either take action or you forget it. You're looking in the mirror, but you forget. So if you're religious, but you don't bridle your tongue, you are doing something to your heart. If you don't have control over the vehicle that the heart uses to express itself, James says you're deceiving yourself. So there you again, you're back to the mirror. Look at the image that I'm giving you. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror with intent. So now he's back to helping, giving us another pearl for our faith string. And everyone, he says, everyone around you will see it, but you will be deceived. I mean, everyone's going to see you, but if you've got a loose tongue and you speak unkindly, or you are lying about someone, or you're angry with your tongue, then what's your practice gonna do? It's only going to deceive your heart, because you're just going to be like this doer hearer up here. You're going to be hearing all the right things. You're telling yourself, oh, I'm doing this. I'm religious about that. I'm keeping the fire. It's alive, right? You see the flame, right? Well, you're only
blow it out.
Yeah, and you're only deceiving yourself. You're only telling yourself something that's not going to be true. So to wrap up, the contrast with these verses right here would be, I would say, a valuable practice or a worthless practice. Those would be the contrasts that I see. Anybody got any connectives or contrasts they see in these last verses? James says, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit the orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. And why do you think he picks orphans and widows?
So everyone's always taken advantage of some of the
Connie, what were you going
very
to say?
people who are supposed to be helping them.
Orphans and widows what do they have?
Nothing. They're lonely.
They have nothing. So if you're doing for them, can they give you anything back?
Not
No.
necessarily.
So if you're doing for an orphan or a widow, you're doing it because your intent is godly. You're not expectant. So he says, do that. And then he says, look inward. And what do you do on the inside? On the inside, you keep yourself righteous. You keep yourself from the world. And that's how he just crammed all that into one. Now, here's what I learned from studying chapter 1. When you go back and you outline chapter 1, you notice when you look at James 2, James 3, and 4 and 5, all these topics are revisited in detail. So that's what I got out of chapter 1, is that James gives him this really tight summary of, here's your string of pearls. This is what you're going to use to adorn your faith. Put it on and look good and be good, and you're going to be valuable to God. Now he's going to go back, starting in chapter 2, he's going to say, now let's talk about this further. And he's going to start with partiality. And Julie's going to take that next month. She's going to talk about partiality. And where do you see Julia? Yeah.
You call Julia Julie.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to call her. She goes by Julia now, but I call her Julia. I actually call her Julia.
I was like, wait, I said, girl, bye.
No, my sister Julie's going to be teaching class.
That's good.
But she's going to talk about partiality. So where do you see partiality in chapter 1? Where do you see partiality? Look at the very end. If you're serving a widow, an orphan, or impartial in the way he's going to address this, like a rich person comes in and you cater to the rich person, but you forget the poor. So I think he's going to connect, like chapter 1, he's going to start off connecting. He goes, let me tell you more about widows and orphans. Don't be partial. You do need to serve people that can't give you anything back, because you don't need a reason to serve them. You need to just go do it, because that's what Christ would have done. So that's where he's going to start. And so I see all through 2 and then 3, 4, and 5, like I said, you're going to see a repeat of chapter 1, all these specific things that he's given us. You're going to see it in detail, in full color. And I like that. Anybody else have anything else they want to add? This was a great chapter.
Well, just one thing, because of what you were connecting, I kind of forgot that James wasn't really a believer before. And there's that quote from Jesus, it's Mark 6:4. Jesus said to them, only in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his own house is a prophet without honor. So kind of
That's right, Kathy.
was what you said.
Yeah.
And that he was living that way. He
Yeah.
knew that his own family, I don't know about his mother.
And don't you think that helps us in working with other people? Because a lot of times, we're really critical, and then I just have to remind myself, they don't know.
Mhm.
And that's what I tell myself, they don't know. My parents used to think they don't know any better. They would use that slang, they don't know any better. But what they really meant is they don't have the truth. They don't have that knowledge. They don't have that information. But we do. And so we're going to be doers and not hearers. Thank y'all for listening today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
It was so full of really great information. Anybody online have anything they want to add? So good to see y'all here.
Excellent lesson. Thank you.
So much to learn in James. Next class is
November 6th.
November 6th.
So we have 2 weeks off. It's one
Yeah,
of those
2
odd
weeks off,
months.
y'all. So it's one of those months where we have lots of Thursdays in October. So the next meeting will be November 6th, and Julie will be teaching partiality. Julia.
I'm too surprised.
Hi, I didn't say either thing.
I was thinking.
Thanks,
Thank y'all.
Joanie.
Way to step up there, girl.
Her face was like, what?
Well.
Great job, sis.
Teach.